The wind crawled through the valley long before the first shot. It was early morning in Afghanistan. That gray hour before sunrise, when the mountains looked like shadows of something older than time. The dirt outside Combat Outpost Keating clung to everything, fine as powder, dry as ash. Inside the Overwatch hide, Petty Officer First Class Avery Cole lay still behind her Mk-13 Mod 7 rifle. Her gloved hand rested on the bolt, her cheek pressed against the stock, her breathing quiet and measured. Through her Night Force optic, the world narrowed to one ridge, one line of sight, one heartbeat. The range was nearly 1,200 meters. 4 armed fighters were moving across the slope, their rifles slung, unaware. The radio in her ear crackled with static and quiet tension. The team was moving through the valley floor. Exposed. Cole adjusted 2 clicks for windage, 1 for elevation, her mind running the data faster than she could speak it. Her spotter whispered the last correction. The world went still. She squeezed the trigger. The first shot cracked like thunder rolling across stone. Dust lifted from the rocks where the bullet passed. Then a figure dropped. Before the echo faded, the bolt was already back. Forward. Locked. Second shot. Another target fell. The third man turned, confused, raising his weapon, and Cole was already on him. Third shot. Fourth. Each one precise. Controlled. Final. 12 seconds. 4 rounds. 4 confirmed impacts. Silence followed. The kind that feels heavier than sound. Down below, the SEAL assault team froze mid-movement. No one spoke. The only voice came from the team leader, cutting through the radio. Tight and sharp, asking who the hell was up there. The reply came calm and simple. Ghost 4. For a moment, even the wind seemed to wait. Every operator in that valley knew they had just witnessed something rare. The kind of shot that doesn't belong to luck or even training. It belonged to mastery. Cole eased her finger off the trigger and exhaled. The smell of burnt powder drifted past her face. The mountains were still gray. The sun not yet risen. But in that quiet stretch of Afghanistan, a legend had already begun to form, carried on the static of the radio and the breath of the cold morning air. The Tactical Operations Center at Combat Outpost, Keating hummed with quiet electricity. Radios buzzed softly in the background. Screens flickered with drone feeds, and the air was thick with the smell of dust, diesel, and coffee gone cold. Petty Officer First Class Avery Cole stepped inside without a sound. She moved with the kind of stillness that comes from years of training, a presence that blended into the background even in a room full of hardened operators. The cold mountain air followed her through the door, carrying a bite that crept under her sleeves. No one looked up right away. They all knew she was there, but few actually saw her. That was how she liked it. She was 31, a veteran of 4 deployments, running under the call sign Ghost 4. She rarely spoke unless asked a direct question, and even then her voice was quiet, almost deliberate. Her gear was standard issue, nothing flashy. Her rifle case sat by her boots, black and unmarked. The Mk-13 Mod 7 inside it had traveled farther than most people ever would. Her work was about precision and patience, 2 things that didn't need to be announced. Long before she was Ghost 4, Avery was a girl in Virginia Beach with a father who taught her how to breathe before he taught her how to shoot. Master Chief William Cole was one of the most respected sniper instructors in Naval Special Warfare. He trained warriors who would go on to carry rifles across deserts and mountains all over the world. But with his daughter, he taught differently. He taught her that the rifle was just a tool, and that the real weapon was patience. He would take her to the range before sunrise, when the air was still and the world hadn't quite woken up. 1 shot a day. He would say, "Cold barrel, no excuses." By the time she was 14, Avery could call wind and elevation faster than most trained shooters. Her father never pushed her toward the Navy, but he didn't have to. She absorbed his world through osmosis. Then, when cancer took him, she found his notebooks, pages of notes, diagrams, and small philosophies written between the margins. Excellence needs no announcement. One page read, "Patience is the sharpest blade." Those words stuck deeper than any bullet. When she enlisted, she did it under her mother's maiden name. She didn't want the doors that would open because of his legacy, or the expectations that would follow. She wanted to earn her place, step by step, the way he had taught her. Early mornings on the range became her rhythm. The air sharp, the rifle steel cold in her hands, the report of one single shot echoing through the fog. She wasn't chasing his shadow. She was honoring his discipline, his stillness, and the quiet truth that perfection doesn't shout, it waits. The Tactical Operations Center felt smaller than usual that morning. The generator's low hum filled the silence between voices, and the smell of coffee mixed with the metallic tang of rifle oil. Lieutenant Commander Eric Brooks stood at the front, calm and precise, the kind of officer who didn't waste words. The briefing slides showed grainy drone footage of a compound deep in the Korangal Valley, their target identified as Qasim Mansour, a Taliban commander who had survived 3 previous raids. His men were protected by a counter-sniper team trained across the border. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. It was going to be dangerous. When Brooks assigned roles, the tone changed. Overwatch Sniper, Petty Officer First Class Avery Cole. Call sign, Ghost 4. The room froze. Someone shifted in his chair. Another SEAL raised his brows but said nothing. The silence was louder than words. Chief Petty Officer Diego Martinez finally broke it. His voice even but edged. He wanted to know why they were trusting the Overwatch position to someone none of them had worked with before. He said what the rest were thinking. They needed someone proven, someone with a record they could count on when things went bad. Another operator added that they'd requested a known shooter from Delta or Div Gru, not a name no one had heard of. Brooks kept his tone steady, explaining that Ghost 4 was assigned directly by Naval Special Warfare Command. That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Martinez leaned back, arms crossed, his eyes on her. He didn't say it out loud, but the message was clear. If she missed, men would die. Avery sat still in her chair, her face unreadable. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. Years of training had taught her that silence was stronger than explanation. When the briefing ended, the others lingered in small clusters, talking quietly. She gathered her notes, slung her rifle case over her shoulder, and walked out without a word. That night, the outpost was quiet. The mountains stood dark and endless under a moon that looked close enough to touch. Avery sat on the rooftop, her rifle beside her, her father's challenge coin in her hand. The words engraved on it caught the faint light. Actions, not words. She remembered his voice from years ago, telling her that the moment you have to explain who you are is the moment you've already lost. The wind moved across the valley, cold and dry. She closed her hand around the coin and looked out into the dark, steady and silent. Tomorrow, she thought, the rifle would speak for her. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when the Chinooks lifted off from the forward base, their rotors cutting through the black sky like distant thunder. The twin MH-47Gs from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment carried the SEAL team, compressed and silent. Fosses hid behind NVGs, the weight of the mission heavy in every breath. The wind tore through the open ramp as they dropped low into the Korangal Valley, the cold biting through gloves and sleeves, stinging exposed skin. The pilots held tight formation, flying nap of the earth to stay below radar. The only sounds were the thrum of engines and the sharp, clipped radio calls passing between crews. When the green light hit, the team moved fast. One by one, they fast-roped down, boots hitting dirt 8 kilometers from the target compound. The Chinooks lifted away in seconds, swallowed by the night. The valley went quiet again. broken only by the crunch of gravel under their boots and the faint chirp of distant insects. Avery Cole and her spotter, Petty Officer Mark Williams, split from the main group. Their route took them east, climbing a rocky ridge that overlooked the compound from roughly 1,250 meters out. The terrain was brutal. Loose rock and dry brush. Every step calculated to stay silent. They reached their overwatch position just before 3:15. The wind was cold and steady. Moving from west to east across the valley, Avery unpacked her rifle. The Mk-13 Mod 7 chambered in, 300 Winchester Magnum. She laid it across the bipod, locking the legs into the rock. The Night Force ATACR 735 56mm scope gleamed faintly under starlight. She checked the Leica Vector 21 rangefinder, confirmed her distance to the compound, and noted the readings from the Kestrel, 5,700 elite weather meter, wind speed 5 miles per hour, temperature 41 degrees. She adjusted for drop, wrote the corrections on her dope card, and calibrated the scope. Every motion was quiet, deliberate, practiced. Through the scope, she saw 6 armed sentries pacing the perimeter, all with AK-47 rifles, rotating in predictable patterns. The compound itself was silent except for a faint light inside one window. Williams scanned with his spotting scope and froze. Another figure, barely visible, was perched higher up the ridge across from them, roughly 1,130 meters away. The position, the body posture, the rifle length. It was a counter-sniper. Brooks came over the comms, his voice calm but clipped, instructing Ghost 4 to neutralize the threat. Martinez broke in immediately, saying the distance was too long, the wind too unstable at this hour. Avery didn't answer. She studied the ridge, the wind, the direction of the dust moving below. A memory surfaced from her father's journal, a note about this valley. Morning thermals rise on the east face at 6:42. 2.3 mil correction. She checked her watch. Still, 40 minutes until dawn. She keyed her radio and asked for 90 seconds to reposition. Brooks denied it. She didn't argue. She crawled forward, body pressed to the rock, dragging her rifle and pack across 40 meters of open ground. Each move was measured. When she reached a shallow depression, she knew it was the one her father had described. The new position shortened the range to about 1,080 meters and gave her a clean line of sight through the corridor where the wind shifted upward. Williams hesitated before following but settled beside her. The world around them was still. Avery checked her scope one last time, adjusted for angle, and set her cheek to the stock. Her breathing slowed. The wind brushed against her face, and she waited for it to turn. The valley stretched before her, dark and endless. As the first faint light began to touch the ridges far to the east, at 6:41 in the morning, the first light crept over the eastern ridge and spilled into the valley. The air changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in the way the dust moved near the rocks, the faint curl of heat rising from the frozen ground. Avery Cole felt it before she saw it. Her father's note flashed through her mind. East face. 6:42. 2.3 mil correction. The thermals had arrived, just as he said they would. The mountains were silent except for the low hum of wind moving through the valley. Avery settled behind the rifle, the Mk-13 Mod 7 resting firm against her shoulder. Her breathing slowed until her heartbeat fell into rhythm with the stillness around her. Williams watched through the spotting scope, calm but tense, his voice steady as he called out the first correction. She adjusted a fraction, her finger resting along the trigger guard, waiting for her pulse to drop. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. Then she squeezed. The rifle cracked. A deep, controlled sound that rolled across the valley and faded into the mountains. The recoil hit her shoulder. Clean and predictable. 1.5 seconds later, through the scope, the counter-sniper dropped, She cycled the bolt, chambered another round, adjusted for drift. The second shot broke the air. Another impact. Williams whispered confirmation, barely believing what he was seeing. Avery didn't stop. Her third target moved across the slope, trying to take cover behind a boulder. She tracked his pace, predicted his movement, led him half a mile ahead, and fired. The shot caught him mid-step. She worked the bolt again, the sound precise and mechanical. The fourth man turned toward the direction of the gunfire, his weapon rising. The fourth shot came clean. Center mass. 12 seconds had passed. 4 targets down. 4 lives ended before the valley even understood what had happened. Williams exhaled, still watching through the glass, murmuring that the ridge was clear, but Avery's eye stayed on the compound. Something caught the edge of her vision. The window on the second floor flashed movement. A man stepped into view, shouldering an RPG-7. Even before Williams confirmed, she knew it was Mansour. He was preparing to fire on the assault team below. His weapon already aimed toward the breach point. Avery's mind went quiet. Years of repetition took over. Range 1,080 meters. She calculated spin drift. Wind at 5 miles per hour. Temperature drop at altitude. The angle of her position above the target. 3 mils high. 2 mils right. She inhaled, held the breath halfway, waited for the reticle to settle. The valley was still. Then the shot broke. The rifle's sound came sharp and final. Through the scope, she saw the impact hit Mansour in the shoulder. His body twisted, the RPG slipping from his grasp. It detonated inside the room. A flash of orange and dust blowing through shattered windows. The explosion echoed across the valley, then faded into nothing but ringing air. Below, the SEAL team pushed forward. Brooks's voice came over the radio, calm and clipped, confirming target neutralized. Avery lowered the rifle. Her gloved hand stayed steady, but her heart hammered hard against her chest. Williams let out a long breath that turned into a laugh, quiet and disbelieving. The ridge smelled of burnt powder and cold rock. For a few seconds, the valley was perfectly still. The wind returned, light and constant, carrying away the sound of battle. Avery sat back, eyes fixed on the horizon. The sunlight finally breaking across the mountains. The storm had passed, leaving only silence and the kind of calm that comes after precision. In those 12 seconds, she hadn't just taken the shots. She had carved her name into a legacy, one the others would only begin to understand when the story reached them later. The valley was quiet now. The gunfire had stopped, and the smell of dust and burned powder drifted in the cold air. Down below, the SEAL team moved through the compound, clearing rooms, marking walls, and collecting what little intelligence was left behind. The sound of helicopters echoed faintly in the distance, the low thrum of engines carrying through the thin mountain air. Up on the ridge, Avery Cole began to pack her gear. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only the tremor of exhaustion that comes when the body remembers it is human again. Lieutenant Commander Eric Brooks climbed the slope toward her position, his boots scraping against loose rock. When he reached the crest, he stopped for a moment, taking in the view of the valley below and the shattered compound that had once been their target. He turned to Avery and asked how she made those wind calls, how she could possibly have read the air so perfectly when the data didn't line up. His tone wasn't skeptical now. It was curious, almost reverent. Avery paused, closing the latch on her rifle case. She looked up at him, her face streaked with dust, her eyes calm and tired. "My father taught me," she said simply, "Master Chief William Cole." Brooks blinked, as if he hadn't heard right, then took a step back, the realization settling in. Martinez reached the top of the ridge moments later, his breathing heavy from the climb. When he caught the name, he stopped too. He took off his helmet, the gesture small but full of meaning. Every SEAL sniper knew that name. The man who trained them, who wrote the manual they studied, who taught them patience and humility through a rifle scope. And now his daughter had just saved them all. No one spoke for a while. The only sound was the soft wind brushing against their gear. Williams finally broke the silence, half smiling as he said that explained her cold-bore shots. Her father must have made her take one every morning. Avery nodded once. Every day before school, one shot, cold barrel. The three of them stood there quietly. The weight of it settling around them? It wasn't pride that filled the air. It was understanding. Legacy. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken because it lives in every breath, every steady hand, every quiet act of excellence that asks for nothing in return. 6 months later, the air at Coronado carried a different kind of stillness. The war was half a world away now, replaced by the steady rhythm of waves against the shore and the hum of another day at the Naval Special Warfare Center. The sun was just breaking over the Pacific, painting the range in soft gold. The smell of salt mixed with gun oil hung in the air. In the distance, the metallic clink of rifle bolts echoed as students checked their weapons before the morning's first exercise. It was training hour. Early, precise, and disciplined. The kind of morning that her father would have loved. Chief Petty Officer Avery Cole walked across the range in khaki uniform. Her steps measured, her face calm. The silver anchors on her collar caught the light. Quiet symbols of rank and hard-earned respect. She had traded combat gear for the steady pace of instruction, but the same focus remained in her eyes. Martinez sat in the front row of the small classroom near the firing line. He looked different now, less skeptical, more thoughtful. When she entered, the chatter stopped. The room came to attention. She set her notes on the table, scanning the faces of the young snipers in training. Some were nervous, some confident, all hungry to prove themselves. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I'm Chief Cole," she said, her tone even. "You'll be firing your first cold-bore shots today. Make them count." The students nodded, understanding more from her silence than her words. The class filed out toward the range, their footsteps measured, their minds steady. The circle had closed. The student had become the teacher. Later that afternoon, the corridors of the sniper school were quiet. The memorial hall sat near the range, lined with photographs and plaques, reminders of the ones who had come before. Inside a glass display case near the end of the hallway sat her father's challenge coin, the same one she had carried in Afghanistan. The metal gleamed under the soft overhead light. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "In memory of Master Chief William Cole," and in honor of his daughter, who proved that excellence speaks in whispers until the moment demands a roar. Avery stood in front of it for a long moment, her reflection faintly mirrored in the glass. The distant surf filled the silence. She didn't smile, but her eyes carried something warmer than pride. It was peace, the kind that comes when a promise has been kept, when a legacy isn't just remembered, but lived. She adjusted her cover, straightened her collar, and turned back toward the range, where new echoes of rifle fire marked the beginning of someone else's story. Avery Cole never asked for recognition. She didn't chase medals or headlines, and she never tried to prove anything to anyone but herself. What she carried into every mission, every shot, every decision, was a lesson her father left behind. Real excellence doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to. It lives in the quiet moments, in the patience before the trigger breaks, in the choices made when no one is watching. Now, the war is over for her. The rifle is cleaned, oiled, and stored. The dust of Afghanistan has long settled, and the mountains that once echoed with gunfire are silent again. Somewhere far away, another young shooter is learning to slow their breathing, to read the wind, to wait for the right second. They may never know her name, but they are part of the same line, shaped by the same discipline. That is how legacies really work. They don't pass through medals or ceremonies. They move quietly, from one steady hand to another, through the rhythm of people who care about doing things right. Avery's story isn't about victory. It's about constancy. It's about what it means to hold yourself to a standard when no one else can see the work. She understood what her father meant when he said that patience is a weapon and humility is armor. Her legacy is proof that greatness isn't about being seen. It's about being true. To every soldier, every operator, every unseen professional who shows up, does the work, and lets the results speak for them. This story is for you. Let it remind us all that excellence needs no announcement. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe to keep these quiet stories of courage alive. Some heroes don't shout, they whisper, until the world finally listens.